Okay, everyone, we have got the live stream working. So excellent, everyone. Just give me a quick Y to confirm you can hear me loud and clear. It sounds good. No internet weird shit happening. Fabulous. Okay, I'm pleased that our extra Zoom capacity worked. I wasn't sure if it would, but it seems to have worked. We've got well over 100 people, so phew-wee. Yes, Lalani, it's being recorded, all good. Okay, so thank you, everyone. Lovely to see you. Great to see you, Clive. Great to see some of my other friends I'm noticing. So let's get underway with this great reset. So it's, hi, Tracy, great to see you. Okay, thank you very much. So let's just get this underway quite nicely. Tony says hi too. Lovely to see you, Tony. Okay, so how to survive the Great Reset. And it's kind of amazing how many people don't know about this. That's how I'll start off. It's just bizarre in a way, really, but in a way understandable. And there's a famous, and it really shows how much we really just don't know our rights in the Western world. And when we got the opportunity to buy property, to get prosperous, it's just so easy, you know, to actually, you know, so it's so easy to get caught up with everything. And in the Western world with the prosperity, you think it'll never end. We tend to think prosperity will never end when we're in the middle of it. And then when disaster happens, we tend to think that disaster will never end either. So it's one of these things that people just really genuinely don't know about. And you're about to find out tonight for some of you, probably for the first time, and see why this is probably one of the most serious things you're ever going to hear about today. So this really is quite serious, what I'm about to share with you tonight. And that's why I'm really pleased how many have shown up and how many are keen to be part of this. So, oh, I thought I had my camera on. Can you see me now? So can you see my handsome face? Yes, great, okay. Or ugly face, depending on your perception. So let's, disclaimer. So tax financial advice, I'm not licensed as a financial advisor. I hopefully know a bit more than most of them, but I'm not licensed to be one. So I'm certainly able to educate you though, because the law says I can do that, and in taxes and things like that. And nor do I wish to give you personal advice either. So I'd like to guide you and help you become sovereign, independent people. So really give it your focus. This, like I said, I want to give this my best. I'm looking at the time. So I'll tell you exactly how the format's going to work. It's probably going to go for a couple of hours to do this really well and do this properly. It's going to start off with, I'm going to go through the various content. That's going to take a bit of time. And then I'm going to take questions. Now you can send questions through. If they relate to the flow of the webinar, I'll definitely answer the questions. You can rest assured. If they don't relate to the flow of the webinar, I'm just going to keep going and ignore it, basically. So, then just make sure you store those questions to the end if they don't get answered. And then for those of you who do want to have some options, this is a free, to be really clear, this is a no obligation free. This is just to give stuff away, but I've been inundated with questions from people like, can we work with you guys? Can we do consults? Without kidding, I have so many messages sitting in my Telegram and inbox right now. I haven't even had time to get back to them because I've been in all-day meetings, and I apologise for that. But yeah, so at the end, for those of you who just wanted to get the education, no problem at all. For those of you who actually think, yeah, I wouldn't, you know, who've asked us previously, this will explain how you can just, the system that we've set up to book at a free call, and we've got things very organised, and just because we don't want it to be a shambles. So there's a nice little system where there's a form you complete, and then Grace, who you'll meet at the end, my business partner and my former wife. And so, Andrea, will there be a recording? And can't say all the time. Yes, hopefully, assuming nothing goes wrong, there'll be a recording. You can never guarantee it because technology occasionally screws things. In theory, yes, Andrea, there will be. So this is my starting one here. It's basically, it's more the first part I want you to see, but my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. In other words, because we just don't know things. and we've lost connection with our higher self. Is probably a better way of putting this. But lack of knowledge or ignorance is the biggest reason we get destroyed. So hopefully what you will learn today will get you on the path to escaping the snares of destruction that loom over Western civilization. So right now, and what you'll cover today overall, so about the Great Reset and what this means, why the rich are freaking out, and they actually are. What I actually find is the more educated people are, the more they're freaking out. People who are quite calm about the whole thing generally aren't really that educated about it and don't actually understand it. So it's taking radical steps to protect their wealth in preparation for government raid. In terms of Mike's question about providing stuff, all you have to do is go look at the World Economic Forum for yourself, Mike. Don't take anything I'm saying for granted, and go to our Wealth Safe Facebook group and watch the video. So I just go to the World Economic Forum site yourself and read it cover to cover, and then you make your own call on it. So why our economic system has been destined for a meltdown for quite some time, and where it will head in the next little while. Now, I've been saying for years that we're heading for an economic meltdown. I said this back in 2005 at the Hyatt Hotel in an event, just because I had been involved in an underground movement and learning some of the deeper secrets of world money. One of the things I mentioned last night was about a video called The Money Masters that I've recommended everyone watch on YouTube, 3.5 hours. And this goes through why our economic system is heading for, basically for death. And as you'll see in this webinar, every single system that's a fractional reserve fiat system like we've got right now always collapses generally within 90 years, has to be redone, but often less. So unless this is the first time in history that doesn't happen, this will collapse. So, and I was told in 2019 from inside information by someone close friends with the Australian politicians at the time, they were freaking out, saying we know that this is coming, we know there's a crash coming, we just don't know how to prepare the people for it. And I had to laugh with 2020. I thought, well, you got no better excuse than this pandemic, so now blame that for the crash of the economy and not the government. So a solution to protect your hard-earned wealth from the coming reset and how to get help. So I shared this the other day. This is just qualified accountant, lawyer, financial planner, over 30 years experience, 10 years as a nerd with the government, and 20 years doing various kind of evil stuff. Well, not really, but like accountant, lawyer, financial planner, a lot of being part of an underground movement, entrepreneur, investing, cryptocurrencies, private equity investments, and just other kind of stuff. So yeah, and like I mentioned, the reason that I first learned about all this was I got involved in an underground movement with a lot of successful, wealthy people living off the grid back in early 2001, when I was going through a health crisis, and resulted in me in my search to resolve my questions about life, go to this movement and learn about the amazing offshore banking world, offshore structuring world, about how the wealthy protected, how they all knew what was coming, and they were all talking about this inevitable crash and the way they were structured. And as the years have gone by, what I have noticed is that that hasn't actually changed. I deal with my business with a lot of high net worth people who, would literally, to them, like 5-10 million is like nothing, ranging to just average everyday people. I've literally worked with from all ranges right up to the very, very elite. So I've had a weird kind of experience to crypto whales and everything like that. And I do notice the common thread is that they're very nervous people, the wealthy, because they're protecting their wealth very, very carefully. They're incredibly well structured, and they're really they're very aware of what's coming, and they all tend to be doing similar things, very aware. Like what I'm saying to you, they just nod their head. I find that an everyday person would go like with masks, like, oh, like, how do you know that? Whereas the wealthy just nod their head because they know this. They know what you're seeing right now is just a whole game of like speculation. That's really what the world economy is right now. Basically just purely speculation, where by and large, most people don't even want to go and do work now, and would rather just sit at home and get stimulus payments or, kind of speculate on markets or trading. What I am subscribed to one of the best investment networks in the world that I've come across, and their tips and recommendations and market analysis have been very, very accurate. They virtually never misled me. I read their stuff regularly. I get updates daily, and they just said we're never as close to a meltdown right now as we have been, and they're saying enjoy these gains from the markets, but make sure you keep pulling money out and be protecting yourself. This is the advice I got just 2 days ago from them. They're saying that when you've got every man and his dog going in, opening up Robinhood trading accounts, speculating on the market, that's like the new in thing. You know, even like 18-year-olds talking about how they've made money on a gaming stock. They said, you know that the end is nigh, and you'll see that through history. So rest assured, what I'm saying is at the very, best case scenario, we're going to certainly have a recession coming up or quite severe meltdown of the markets, but that will be the least of people's worries when we start talking about a complete collapse and reset the economy to try to deal with the severity of the meltdown. Now, if you know what's coming, you can handle it. So that's what I'm here more to do today. Really hit you with the truth, the kind of stuff that's not easy and nice to hear. But I've always said to myself, I'd rather the painful truth than a lying kiss. That's always been my truth. I'd rather a girl brutally break up with me than pretend she still likes me, that kind of thing. So in December 2018, I predicted an economic meltdown. I had increasing concerns, and I started a club to protect clients and help them become sovereign and come out escaped from the meltdown. So that was actually, I was that certain in 2019 that things were going to melt down. And I've actually got, videos which you can see on our Global Wealth Club site, which I'll show you briefly at the end, which you can always go and watch yourself, where I actually go through and present why it's going to happen and what I see coming. So generally, just a few little nasties for you. You don't own your property unless you have a allodial title in the Western world. A freehold is just basically a feudal lease from a government. So basically, you do not own your property. So if you think you do, you don't. Again, don't believe me. Go and do some searches. Find out in recent years who's taken over the property titles, and it's not the Crown. Queensland, for example, it's Brigalow Corporation. That's the hint I'll leave you, but I'll let you go and find that out for yourself. The Australian, for example, corporate government is a corporation. The Commonwealth of Australia is registered at Washington, DC, as the state of Western Australia. Money doesn't actually exist. There's no tangible backing to our current money system and has not been since 1971. In 1933, Franklin Delano Roosevelt issued an executive order ordering that all US citizens give up all their private gold, and anyone who didn't would be rounded up, locked up, and get 10 years jail. Who here did not know that? I'm just curious. Anyone not know that? So I'm personally, Franklin Delano Roosevelt ordered all the gold to be seized under the order of the Federal Reserve Bank. You can watch the Money Masters on YouTube to find out about it. And the gold mysteriously disappeared in the Fort Knox. When they went to audit, they wouldn't audit and never came out again. And rumours are it's been sitting in Europe and was seized by the bankers. If you ever watch Howard Freeman's Uniform Commercial Code as an example, Howard Freeman actually explains that US has been bankrupt since 1938. So he said that officially, but it was even before then. So the bankruptcy was defaulted in 1933. The wealth was actually taken, and in 1938, all judges, all lawyers, everyone like that was called into a meeting and told that it happened. Now, again, I will just, for example, if you go into Howard Freeman, this is one of the first guys I learned in the underground movement. There's the link for you to do your own research in case you think I've gone off my head. So Howard Freeman, the UCC connection, there you go. Go and do your own research, read it for yourself, and then make your own decision. So, like I said, I didn't promise, like I said in the Matrix, this would be a nice webinar. I just promise you'll hear the truth. So at one stage, I don't know if it's still the case, India was illegal to own cryptos, and banks charge interest on loans that don't actually, it prints out of nothing. So basically, they lend you money that belongs to you. So the whole system is one big stupid scam. That's basically a simple way of putting the whole thing. It's just one big stupid scam. And everyone has absolutely fallen for it, hook, right, and sinker, because of Western greed. And the fact is, as I told someone recently, that unfortunately, we're pretty dumb species. We've had many thousands of years of this happening, and every single time the same thing happens, humanity get caught up with speculation and greed. They all say it's all going to be different this time, and then it all collapses, and then everyone says, shit, we should learn our lesson, and they all cry, have loan money, and then it all happens all over again. So it's generally, unfortunately, hopefully this time at least we will be a little bit different in that there'll be a few more awakened than normal, because people like this can come to webinars and listen to people like me say this kind of stuff. But yes, the more you study this whole kind of thing, if you didn't have hope, I unfortunately learnt this kind of stuff when not many people knew about it in the underground movement, and I didn't really know the answer. So you could only imagine what my life was like for a number of years from 2001 onwards. At one stage, I was literally completely depressed. I'm like, what's the point of getting any money at all? This is just like nuts. And fortunately now I've learned a bit and I've grown a bit from that stuff. And so, yes, you're going to learn it's a big scam, but you're going to learn how to work your way through this great, big, gigantic scam. So a simple rule of thumb is every 90 years, a reset of a fictitious financial system will take place, which basically means flushed out and restarted and have a fresh start. And every 45 years, a partial reset of some kind. You will see this has played out. It's certainly in the Western world. 1971, we were removed from the gold standard, and 1933. So we're basically due for one by around 2023, which seems to be a magic about 90 years. So I've been predicting around 2023, I expect this to happen, or maybe just a bit after, latest 2025. So that's been my feeling with the whole thing. So the Old Testament Jubilee, if you ever read Robert Kiyosaki's Second Chance or Porter Staintree in his great book, America 2020, Kiyosaki explains that Porter Staintree talks about the absolute meltdown that's going to actually happen, and the civil war is going to hit America. There's various predictive forecasters that have gone into this. Kiyosaki in his Second Chance in 2006 predicted the mother of a meltdown. If you ever want to really find out something curious, go back to about 2013 and you'll find a book written by Robert Kiyosaki and a certain man called Donald Trump, who some of you have probably heard of before. And the two of them wrote a book called Why We Want You to Be Rich. Now, this certain man called Donald Trump, in his chapter, said if he hoped that one day he would become president of the USA, and if he ever did, he gave his blueprint of what he would do to save America from a coming reset. And he proceeds to go through and gives this amazing plan. And the first thing he did when he became president was try to do that plan. And guess who blocked him? A certain group called the Democrats, who some of you may have heard. But if you actually go and read Trump's book, which he wrote in 2013, you will discover that he already had. The reason he got into the US presidency was to try and save America from the coming economic collapse. That was his main reason, above all else. So who here didn't know that, by the way? That was his main reason he got in. He wanted to save America from complete ruin. So you can tell from his book how much that man loved his country. Absolute true protectionist, which in economics, a protectionist president is understood. There's only been 4 protectionist presidents since 1776. In other words, people who absolutely were very American, first and foremost. Looking up the American first and foremost. One of them was a guy called Theodore Roosevelt. Another one was called Andrew Jackson. And the other one was George Washington. What's interesting is what all 4 have in common is that all 4 presidents were hated by the media. They were slammed, and the banks and the media tried to get them out of office and try and do a fraud on them. The only difference between Trump and Jackson was that Andrew Jackson, it's quite funny when you hear the story of Andrew Jackson, but Jackson took on the banks head on and basically called them a brood of vipers, a whole lot of scumbags. You know, you would love Andrew Jackson if you're into that kind of stuff. Jackson was also from the Wild West, and he was a brilliant sharpshooter. So they sent 3 assassins after Jackson, and he killed all of them because he had these glasses that enabled him to see behind him, and he could go so fast in the draw but they tried 3 times to assassinate him, and he killed all of them in a duel. So, and in a shootout. So there's some interesting history that probably none of you actually know about. But Jackson was almost put out of office and ruined and brought to his knees by the banks, and then due to a series of events, including a great spiritual awakening that happened at the time in America with Hickory Jackson, the people and the pastors of the churches woke up, and the bankers were not only forced to back off, but many of them were impeached and got seriously disgraced. And the result of it was America had abolished a central bank, and for 77 years, the bank's power was bleeding and broken. And it wasn't until 1913 they got themselves back in. And you can hear the story from the money masters, and boy, were they ready to incite revenge for being kicked out. So, yeah, Save America, Trump's new presidential campaign. Yeah, you just got to read his book. Trump is absolutely, he hasn't lost his vision to do this. He just realized that he has to change his modus operandi if he's going to do this, that's all. So if you're not ready for it, you can lose everything you work for. And I mean, it's kind of speaking to the converted about your rights and freedoms there. The problem is when people are impoverished and you can't feed your kids and shit like that, you start doing whatever microchips or dabs or whatever else. And it's, yeah, I've realized that there's a lot of fear, especially in Perth, when I'm speaking to a lot of people from this whole thing. And look, in fairness, I can understand why. This is quite scary stuff. And like I said, I'm finding the wealthier, intelligent clients are the ones who just say to me, they're the most honest. I had a very wealthy businessman who done incredibly well. He just said, look, Warren, I shit myself. He said, I won't deny to you. He said, I'm just in horror with all this. He said, I said, yeah, well, you probably should be. But his fear has made him move fast. And then that calms him down. So, yeah, Melbourne, we send our hearts to get food. Yeah, no, there's some pretty interesting stuff. I mean, many of you would know about all this. I personally don't have the slightest doubt we watched the biggest fraud happen before us for many reasons I won't go into. But at the very least, as one of my friends said, whether it's true or not, it's unlikely anything will come of it. And this in itself raises a mountain of questions. It's irreparably broken down the trust in the US election system, and it's ended any trust in people's government that was still remaining of anything. So US is heading for civil war. Guns are sold out. I've got friends over there I speak to. They just said you can't buy a gun, you can't buy ammo. When some ammo got into the Vegas shop the other week, it was sold out within 5 minutes. Everyone's just bunking up ready for governments to come and try and take their guns or their gold, and they're planning to shoot their heads off. That literally is where America is at. So why are the rich fleeing? That's one reason. Some of you may remember last year in Melbourne, the rich were getting on boats and fleeing out, and it was in the news. So wealthy clients I know have done that. They're going to Panama, they're going to Switzerland, they're getting on boats and going out into the sea to see what happens. I know from a client friend who's connected in America, he said most of his friends were jumping on boats and going out to wait the result of the US election. Like many are going into the hills and into the mountains and into bunkers in the regional areas. What's very interesting is, I don't know if any of you have heard of remote viewing, but remote viewing is a government technology on being able to psychically read the future using military techniques. And the remote viewers in America network, which I'm part of, in 2019, sent me out a whole email saying that the remote viewers had actually all said a pandemic going to hit America, and it all fled to the regions. I must admit, I thought at the time, okay, it's interesting. And so most of the remote viewers saw it coming and they've moved there. So, and unfortunately, the remote viewers' next predictions aren't particularly great. So the reason that the wealthy are fleeing is they just know things and they've been educated. And education is a blessing and a curse. It's a curse in the sense that being educated can hurt a lot because you realize that you got stuff to lose. So they're not only learning financial matters and where to store wealth, but they're also very acknowledging history. I spent many years of my life learning history, economically, politically. My father was one of Australia's top political analysts, David Black. My grandfather was knighted in 1971 by the Queen, Edward Black, his name was. And both of them very intelligent people, in theory anyway, and basically my father taught me a lot about stuff to do with politics and things like that. And so I've actually been predicting elections almost to the seat. Like I said about Western Australia, for example, that I predicted Mark McGowan would win this election, the biggest landslide in Australian history. And I actually said to someone, I doubt he'll win more than, bet the Liberals will win more than 6 seats maximum. And I said, I think they'll probably win about 3 or 4. So the You can work that out, and you find with the wealthy, most of them are pretty good at that just because they've learnt to forecast, they've learnt to study, all that kind of stuff. So they always have a plan B. So yeah, I just had someone message me about the webinar. So let me just send this out to someone. As you see, you get various lovely little links, but it's always nice when people are keen. So thank you for coming, everyone. Okay, so the main thing is they have a preferred place to live, but one big difference I've noticed for the wealthy is they're less attached than most people are. Like, most people become very attached to their way of life, to their family, to their city, to their gyms and everything like that. The wealthy, although they love those things, I've noticed they can cut their losses and grieve quickly. The classic example of a difference between that is I've just noticed is when you've got the crypto market collapsing. 95% of people are going like, oh shit, or stock market crashing. The wealthy, by and large, have already got out a lot of this stuff. They're selling off a bit as it's crashing, and then they're just waiting. And as everyone else is in freaking out, they calmly and quietly wait in the background and they buy up. So the wealthy, although they have all their preferred places to live, they know the realities of life and they know when they've lost. I can remember last year, a brilliant client of mine, he realized he'd made a major stuff up with his shares and he just sold them, and he lost him 20% of his whole share portfolio. I remember him saying, look, I'm annoyed, but he said, it's life. You know, he said, I made a bad call, I'm out. He said, and I put it somewhere else, and he made the money back somewhere else. So the main thing to understand here is to understand what's happening. And naturally, there's going to be some grieving as it really hits you, but just kind of going, I'll do what I have to do. And once I've known this 100% for sure is happening, I've just made certain decisions. I've not grieved. I've let go of a lot of attachments in Perth. I've simplified my life. I've scaled myself right down. I moved everything online for that reason. And I moved away from the physical because I thought I cannot afford my business to be attached. I made that decision about 8 years ago to physical structure because I can see that something bad is going to happen. And I need to make sure that I'm flexible so I can move if I need to, quick, smart. And I can tell you last year when things were really at one stage, I was watching and thinking, I was getting ready to pretty much just bunker down and get down bush. And then things happened. I thought, nah, I'm going to hang around for a bit longer. So it's basically understanding all this. So a very good book, and look, I've given you enough reading, and you're probably thinking, oh God, Warren, stop throwing books. Maybe go and do a speed reading course, or just be up late at night, but you need to learn this stuff. So The Sovereign Individual, Mastering the Transition to the Information Age, written in 1995, the Bible of the whole sovereignty movement. And sovereignty just means to basically govern yourself without anyone else telling you what to do. That's why when people ask me for advice, you notice I don't really give it. And that's deliberate, by the way. Number one, I'm not allowed to give you legal advice, but I don't actually want to. I want you guys to get empowered and just be a guide, you know, help everyone as much as I can. Even with this, what I'm teaching you tonight, just want to empower you. Most people, you'll never actually work with me or do any kind of consulting or advice with me. I expect a high percentage of you. But there's going to be a small number that probably will. And the small number that do it, you know, we'll work with you and get, you know, looked over pretty well. After, you'll end up well in front from it and we'll end up well in front. So that's how a business should be, you know, win-win for both people. And give a lot free. That's the new economy for me. Give away a lot free and give a lot back to the world. And then because you give back to the world, the higher powers and the higher ones will reward you. So yes, it's a brilliant book, The Sovereign Individual, by Rees Moggs and Davidson. So great book. Heavy reading, but worth it. So this is a summary of what they said, foretelling the next 50 years ahead. Collapse of the Roman Empire would repeat, which, by the way, some of you would have seen the Roman Empire, you know. Thanks, Andrew, it's very kind of you. But the Roman Empire email, did any of you read that email we send out as a follow-up from registering about the Roman Empire collapse and how it happened? I'm just curious. Yeah, a few of you did, good. Yeah, that's worth reading because it actually goes through and explains how the Roman Empire collapsed. And when you see it, you shake your head in astonishment because The same thing's happening in the Western world. They had lockdowns. They eventually locked down the money. So rest assured, at some stage, they'll lock the money down, which means you won't be able to move it out of the country or not without getting permission in the same way you're getting this now. So rest assured that will happen at some stage. If they can lock the whole economy down and turn it into a convict camp with the planes, they can certainly lock down the economic system and bring capital controls like South Africa and other places. They spelled out what would happen, the zombie apocalypse, which pretty much means a world where most people are zombies. They do nothing productive. They're parasites just living off the system of governments and other people like you guys, hard work. So most business owners pay taxes, and meanwhile, the stimulus people sit there, you know, watch their basketball, watch their porn, do whatever they want to do, and live off the stimulus payments of other people. And the worst parasites of all, as they said in the underground movement, is the banks, who don't really do anything other than create an economic system which they print out of nothing and write papers and steal assets. So it's unashamed deprivation of civil liberties, laziness, complacency. They did also predict an acceleration and increase in access to information, which meant that the opportunity for people to get sovereign would increase, like it has. I raced to the bottom, and they said there would be more and more countries who would offer tax incentives, which have happened since that time. Rise of cryptocurrencies in 1995. I was in cryptos back in 2001 when they were first coming out. So national governments collapsing. What they predicted in the long run is that big national large governments would collapse in favor of small sovereign communities or sovereign individuals. But they said there would be an ugly transition period as governments would realize they were losing their power, and they would just start to go nuts. Like they would seize money everywhere. They wouldn't even hide the fact that they're just grabbing your money, and they would be taking your rights away like nothing. So we're in that transition collapse phase they talk about in the book. But they said that people would start to operate independently and realize they just don't need governments. They don't need someone else to rescue them. That was a big thing that they predicted. So everyone following me so far? Enjoying this so far? That's more important. Who's a little bit shocked or like, whoa, you know? Anyone? Looking great. Written in 1995. So, yep. So Rome was eventually invaded by a very keen, very ruthless foe, a man called Attila the Hun, who basically, what happened with Rome in simple terms, it became lazy, high taxes, everyone was lazy, they stopped doing military drills, they lost their strength, they were more focused on orgies and getting drunk, the Roman soldiers, and they got invaded by Attila the Hun, and they ended. That was how it actually ended. So we're in the middle of the end of a civilization. America no longer being the world's sovereign power. My guess is at some stage they'll probably go to war with Russia in the next little while, based on what Biden's saying and the fact that they've already bombed Syria. And my guess is if they do, they'll probably lose. So and I think when that happens, it's going to be a very interesting time. That's a pretty radical prediction for me, but hopefully that won't happen. But yeah, that's my overall prediction. I think that certainly we're heading for more wars, and that's why getting yourself financially established, getting strong, getting yourself well protected is the time to do it. So we just don't learn from history with socialism and communism. Like, this is what, you know, Mr. Marx wrote in 1848. Like, to run a socialist society, we actually run 9 of these 10 things in Australia. Bronwyn says, what about China? Well, I don't know. I think all my study has shown me, Bronwyn, that China and Europe, by and large, there's 2 groups fighting for world control, and that's the Chinese and a European group. They'll end up stalemating and reaching an in-between agreement, and my feeling is Europe will get Australia and China will get somewhere else. That seems to be my read on the whole thing. So it's just a case of whether you get which way you get beaten up is the best way of looking at it. So basically, communism is everything being taken by governments, by and large. So that's communism. So as Dr. Adrian Rogers said in 1931, What someone receives without working for, somebody else must give you. That's when I read people saying the government should compensate businesses who've been locked down. And I say, no, don't fucking ask for that shit, you know? Rather, the government shouldn't be locking anyone down in the first place. And if they, it's that simple, you know? And I do agree that if the government's going to lock it down, then they should come and pay for it, and they should be paying out of their own pocket. But yeah, the whole idea is that wherever money comes from someone else must give it. I'm really hoping in the business community that, and I'm noticing more and more that's happening. And that's why I love Perth Awake Business. It's probably my favorite group at the moment, because I can see people teaming up. I can see a network forming, and yeah, I can see posts like someone saying like, hey, this cafe's been, you know, targeted by the police, go and support them. I think this is what you need, you know, go and support them, you know, go and take them out, you know, look after them, things like that. So the government cannot give to anybody anything the government does not first take from somebody else. Really important to do that. So that's the first rule. So Jason, Europe will get Australia or China. Well, I'm betting on Europe myself, Jason. So, and I'm betting that Australia is going to have a bit of a shot at becoming a sovereign nation and be a bit of a dark horse. That's my other one, but it's going to take a bit more pain or waking up. So the faster we wake up and we wake up people around us and find creative ways to do it, the quicker we can rise up and become sovereign. That's how I see this. So, yeah, so global debt is soaring right now. Like, US government have just printed this money, and Joe Biden has openly come out and said he's going to increase taxes heavily on the wealthy. Have anyone seen that? And also his speech 2 days ago, when he just said that if you're a good little boy or girl and got your little jab, you wouldn't have to wear masks anymore. And it was fairly openly said. I don't know if anyone saw that little wonderful press conference. Yeah, China's been buying farms, but you notice that that ScoMo is passing laws to break down deals, and slowly in the background, China's being forced out. That's why they're so pissed. And I've no doubt that's coming from Europe. Europe want them out. So yeah, this is high wealth taxes right now, okay? So very high wealth taxes is what Biden's talking about. So basically, Trump dropped all the taxes on the wealthy, and Biden is putting them right back up again. And you actually look at the Biden-Harris tax plan, eventually, people are going to pay 73%. Yeah, when I say Europe, I don't want to get too bogged down in that one. It's a whole different webinar, but I'm talking about the IMF, the banking people in Europe, because there's that group, and then China have got their own little banking network. So I'm talking about the international banking in Europe. Yeah, Klaus Schwab, those kind of guys. So eventually this is what happens, like in Venezuela, people just start running for their lives. I was in Panama in 2018 getting my Panamanian residency, and I was meeting Venezuelan girls everywhere I went. And I'm like, why is there so many Venezuelans? And they said, surely you know what's happened to our currency. I said, well, kind of, but what's happened? They said, we've completely collapsed. The whole money system's completely collapsed from socialism, is what they would tell me. And so, you know, that we can't get through to the country anymore when we're fleeing, you know, we're all getting down here to provide for our families. So this is what eventually happens. So socialism is rising, and not only rising, but people are wanting it. Most millennials want socialism. They actually say, fuck the wealthy, you know, these buggers are not looked after us, you know, drive them out. So socialism is really driving, because basically the new generation don't realize what socialism has done in every country it's been in. So it's there's a huge rise. Governments are just simply doing stimulus packages and openly coming out, yeah, like eat the rich. Jacques Hollandia, the French president, openly came out and just said, I hate rich people. And he put 76% upon wealthy people while owning his own little holiday Swiss chalet. So, you know, it's that kind of stuff there. So, yeah, I've got some very elite friends who've got inside information and higher level military intelligence, and what they all tell me uniformly is that the new socialism that's coming in will be slightly different to the old. the old socialism was only two types. You either the elite, or either the government, or you were the people. There's going to be a threefold one. There's going to be, and you're all seeing it now, government, big tech, or elite, people. So the oligarchs who basically, they won't be government, but they'll be very wealthy business people, billionaires who play ball with the system. And the reason why is governments have, the one thing they've learned from their mistakes is they don't do business very well. So what they do is they kind of, and this is exactly what Vladimir Putin does in Russia, if you actually study Putin's economic model. Now, admittedly, Putin actually turned Russia around. Like, Russia's economy is significantly better than it was. It was an absolute mess after the collapse of communism. They tried to go to Western democracy, and that was a complete disaster. So Putin has gone on a threefold model, which involves the oligarch model, where you've got people who basically follow the Russian propaganda, and then you've got the elite, which is Putin and his direct government people, and who own their palaces and everything, and then you've got the rest of the people. So kind of like it's the same thing coming here as the inside plan, but there'll be like 5% will control all the wealth, and basically 95% won't have the wealth at all. So 1% kind of will be the elite. There'll be the oligarchs. There'll be a 4% that will be the awakened ones, which will have some wealth, but they'll be always trying to shut down. And then 95%. That's what they're aiming for doing. So it's just understanding what's going on and start to think, how am I going to work my way through this? And the answer is step by step, one at a time, working on things, getting educated and taking steps constantly, like on this. So even back in 2005, I was teaching this in seminars where I was saying we were heading for a complete collapse of higher taxes. We were heading for reduction of pensions and plundering of retirement savings, just based on statistics from the Bureau and their estimate as to what was going to happen. So in other words, they predicted even back in 2008, this coming zombie apocalypse with all the demographic data. So statistics and figures tells you everything you need to know, which basically gets people afraid of losing assets. And now we'll just start to move towards the World Economic Forum and what this actually means. So what do they mean by the Great Reset? And like I said, all you have to do is just simply go and have a look at just look up, type this in Google and go for your life. You know, that's my strong recommendation to everyone here. And you will quickly see this thing here. So it was first announced like in a major way in 2016. And the elite are not even hiding it. And you're going to see shortly what the elite they actually say. So I've already mentioned this here. The reason why this thing is collapsing, to become a fractional reserve system, is how people are actually, they see this as a chance for fast gains. Like, we live in a society where speculation is really the name of the game for most people right now. I mean, right now, everyone I know is a crypto millionaire in theory, or a crypto expert. Like, everyone. You only know a true crypto expert when the market's collapsing. So this is what Klaus Schwab, the dude who runs the whole thing, says. And they use this kind of beautiful language that when you read about it means where really what this is saying is it gives us a great chance to fuck up the world and take over it. But they'll couch it in different language. Represents a rare but narrow window of opportunity to reflect, reimagine, and reset our world. And here is very blatant. Now is the time to press the reset button on capitalism. In other words, let's bring in some socialism because capitalism hasn't actually worked. That's what they're basically saying. And cash will be gone. Barry Smith in 1988, in his book First Warning and Second Warning, I heard all this when I was 20 and sitting in his workshops, that there would be he predicted the rising of the Bush, and there would be a cash society and a reset back in 1988. So this is what now is a logo from the forum. So you will own nothing and be happy. So And even if, like Danielle says, somebody, her husband doesn't believe any of it, well, I always say to people like that, you will when it happens. And the second thing I say is, in any event, even if the World Economic Forum goes nowhere, people like that just don't actually understand the nature of the economic system and how it's set up, and why, regardless of the World Economic Forum, it has to collapse. And the truth is, as much I hate to say this, the world does need to be reset, but it needs to be reset with a responsible, correct thing, where the banking debts get wiped out and the people get the money back, like we did in 1290 in England. Not where basically all that happens is the banks get bailed out and the people lose all their money, which is what is planned in here. So Pauline Hanson actually was one of the only two politicians, in credit to her, who got up and she openly brought this out and said, I want Scott Morrison and the government to refuse to participate in this, and they wouldn't give her that assurance. But I don't know if any of you saw that, but Pauline Hanson came out openly and was calling out her fellow politicians to say, you cannot subscribe Australia to this shit. So, yeah, is everyone following this so far? Like, are you enjoying this? Is it too in your face? Are you kind of glad you're hearing the truth? What's the general feeling? Yeah, well, someone said she didn't give us any more. Pauline Hanson isn't exactly the smartest when it comes to that, but I think her heart's in the right place. That's how I'd summarise it. So these are the three things that they've said in this long, very difficult couched world. And you've got to actually be an accountant, or you've got to know economic language. And I mean, like I said, I've spent my whole life studying language and things like that. So let's actually look at what this actually means. So wealth taxes, and they say this, when you go through papers, they talk about wealth taxes. In other words, the kind of assumption is that, you know, people building up wealth and handing it on to their families is half the reason that we have this kind of, you know, elite oligopolism, and why we've got this kind of, you know, rich, like look at these people with these beautiful houses, you know, these rich people are the reason that you're poor, you know, because they're greedy and hoarding their wealth. The real issue is the fact that the bankers have got a whole money system, but they control everything. If they were out the way, you wouldn't have this problem in the first place. So, you know, so someone says they did it in Cyprus with confiscating bank accounts. Yeah, no, absolutely. They've done it in Cyprus. They've done it in Argentina. They have done it in many places. Someone asked about the solution. You're going to have to wait till the end, Surin. For now, we're going to keep going through the different issues. So higher taxes and more issues. That's the first one. They've said more laws. They've clearly said more money printing, and they've even recommended that governments consider going into retirement savings. I've always been nervous of superannuation for years myself for that reason, and avoided it because I don't trust that for a minute myself. And I've found nearly all my really wealthy awakened clients don't go near it for that reason. Now, I'm not making any recommendations on that because I'm not licensed about super. It's just what I do myself. I keep well away from it. Government ownerships of businesses and corporations is called nationalisation, where you nationalise properties and businesses. And there's talks about with Biden where certain companies will have to give up part of their shares to the government. That's what starts happening with socialism. And this is all straight from the Economic Forum when you read their papers. Greater control and tracking, imposing more restrictions on rights and freedoms for the long-term greater good, vaccinations to keep the public health in order and keep it checked, and removal of cash. So these are what they've said. So basically it's getting yourself educated. So really what you do is get educated, get understanding, and then start and just follow a step-by-step plan. That's really the way to handle this. And I'll be going through some options very soon and different ways you can do that. So yeah, AI tracking people. So Christine says, is there oxymoron? Is there any safe financial institution to store cash short term? So yeah, look, there's various places you can do it. It's like the wealthy tend to diversify, and I'll be going through that shortly, Christine. But just to show you one example, I love to show people, just to show you, just even doing tax planning alone, let's say you put $100,000 into an investment and you could make 20% per year with options trading or holding it as an investment. And And there are actually things like offshore European investments where you can make that kind of stuff. And even on cryptos now, you've got like the 18% in that. This is the difference with taxes, what it does to your compound effect after 10 years. So you've literally like got 726,000 compared to 284 if you pay no tax. Even if you pay a Hong Kong tax rate of 15%, you still almost doubled your money from if you pay Australian tax rates. Now, over 20 years, look at that. Like, if you're paying, say, a 30% company tax rate compared to paying a 15% Hong Kong tax rate or super, or 0% tax overseas through legal planning, you can actually see that. So there you go, quite interesting. So 48.5% or whatever else. So what you've got here is tax planning. So, okay, here's a snapshot of economic history. So the stock market collapsed in 1929. So, you know, currency reset, seizing gold, American losing 15% of savings, things like that, all that kind of stuff. So there's a 1933 gold seizing happened. There was 1971, the gold standard was removed, whatever else. So things like that. So Great Reset. Reset means universal income, money given away, take business people of investing. So things like that, universal income money. I just saw someone said Mark McGowan's continued mask restrictions. Yeah, from what I could see, they've continued, but no longer outdoors. So just indoors when you're going into indoor public venues. So that's what I understood. So things like that. So the reset means for the Great Reset. So you can see some kind of figures here. Now I put 2021 here, but yeah. So look, like I said, this is something that in 2 hours, there's only so much you can do. You could literally spend this for hours. When I first learnt this stuff, I was staying up until 3 o'clock every morning studying this stuff back 20 years ago when I first learnt this in the underground movement. I was just studying everything. So since 1971, there's been no gold standard, which means it's not linked to actually anything. So let's just go next, before we go into solution, what lies ahead from here very quickly, before we start to go into some solutions. These are all speaking to the highly converted. These are the big things that they're talking about, of course. And have any of you seen the cryptocurrency patent by Microsoft from last year, the 666 one, out of interest? Just curious who's seen that one and who hasn't. Yeah, have a look at it. 2020 06 06 06, and have a read of it. It's like you almost can't believe it. You know, it's just, I tried to post about the whole thing and I got Facebook jail for 3 days. You know, so yeah, I got literally Facebook jailed for 3 days as a result of actually doing that. So yeah, very interesting, like very interesting. So yeah, Mark has put it in the chat. Thanks, Mark. So one of the things to understand, now just to explain this whole meltdown for you, what's actually happening. Yeah, so generally the market has been going up exponentially. We're at record highs, and every investment analyst I know, and I've got still some very, 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 very high net worth people who, including in our Global Wealth Club, is a guy called Steve Pettit, who presents a lot, and he's been working with 50 to 100 million people for years and more. And yeah, he just said, look, this thing is going to be brutal. And so they have been literally moving their money around over the last little while. So not the time to be in denial at all or bury your head in the sand. So now let's have a look at the solution and what it means from here. Let me just have a look at how we're going for time. Yeah, we're doing quite well for time, actually. Very well. So Let's go through. So this is what I'm going to say. So something that was said by Rothschild years ago, and I mean, I know you don't like him, but Rothschild said when there's blood in the streets, that's when he would buy. And one thing that you'll find, there's a book called The Book of Wealth. I don't know if any of you've heard of this. It was written by Hubert Howie Bancroft. And it was originally written only for the billionaires of the world to help them stay billionaires. And the book was never meant to be leaked, and it got leaked eventually. And what's interesting about the book is most of the teaching is about safety and teaching you how to safely take care of your wealth. So it's very tempting in the speculative world when cryptos are going like ape shit and you're seeing 50 times growth to just think, I've got to stay in there a bit longer. The hardest thing to do, and you always doubt if you should have done it, is to sell some of it off, put it into a stable coin with cryptos, move it into precious metals like a gold and a silver, or go and invest it into into a different kind of venture, like an oil and gas company, or then go into an energy company or something like that, or invest it into another business or anything like that. And Sharon said, if money loses value, what's the point of moving it around? Because an asset is still an asset. Like if you've got an asset, it's still an asset. That's the basic thing that the elite live by. That's why Bill Gates owns the most farmland of anyone in America right now. That's why almost every single elite have been doing that. Good luck trying to buy farmland. It's been going through the roof in most major Western countries because they're all expecting food shortages, as an example. So an asset is an asset. Even if it cuts down from 1 million down to 100,000, but it's an asset, it's still going to be very valuable. All these figures are made up. Like if you went to Indonesia, you could have 1 million rupees, and that's nothing. You have $1 million in Australia, you know, that's worth a little bit more than 1 million rupees in Bali. So it's all just made up. So yes, and if you watch the money masters, currencies lose value. Money itself, like gold, if you study the last 1,000 years of gold and use weighted average calculations of gold, gold hasn't really gone up or down over the last 1,000 years overall averaged. It just hasn't gone up at all because all these figures are just speculative stuff. So nobody wants to be the wealthiest man or woman in a prison. So this is the thing too that you got to actually realize. Well, the whole system is manipulated. People are writing about it. The whole thing is manipulated. Like if you think about it, if you control the sandpits, you can tell who plays in the sandpit and what the rules are. So Google owns the sandpit right now, and Facebook owns the sandpit of social media. So Facebook decides to put me in jail, well, I get put in jail. So if the elite basically control the silver system, as they've done since 1933 in the Western world pretty heavily, well, they can make the rules and they can make you live in the illusion, believing you got money when you really don't. So the biggest thing that COVID is showing, and I mean, just put in a, that's me or something like that in the chat, if the biggest change you've come, or one change has come, is you've realized that all your focus you were doing 2 years ago on businesses and getting wealthy or doing what you're doing suddenly is not really important when you're getting masked up and losing freedoms. Who would say that that's been a major shift in your thinking? But you suddenly realize that a lot of that other stuff actually isn't important anymore. I mean, I certainly did. Yeah, a lot of you just realize very quickly that, God, you know, like 2 years ago, your idea of suffering, very self-centered, all of us, you know, probably like, oh, you know, I didn't get a property for 1.2 million, you know, and I had to pay 1.3 million, and oh, that sucks, and you have to go on antidepressants, or, you know, you get a horrible thing said about you on social media when you're doing an Instagram bikini shoot, and or your favorite stripper refuses to see you anymore, ups their prices. You know, that's, I mean, my son loves it. As you probably worked out, I love putting appalling posts. And last year I was putting up posts like one of mine, where I said the average Western's idea of suffering is they can't see their favorite stripper, they can't go to the footy. And I mean, back in February, I don't know if you all remember, but when the mask restrictions were lifted, or sorry, not when the mask, when the first 5-day lockdown was lifted, everyone's going, yay, I could go to the pub. And people were literally going there in the pub celebrating. And honestly, I was writing this post, you guys are absolute fucking idiots. You deserve to lose your freedoms. I hope all of you get herded up and bloody microchipped. And, you know, and I was just like, I wrote that, I think, on the post, and I think I got blocked by a few people. And then, yeah, I just was like, are you fucking for real? Like, You've just been locked down for 5 days and you're going to the pub. You are an absolute moron. You know, your brain does not exist. That was kind of how I was thinking. And that, unfortunately, is what the average, like, Westerners' idea of suffering actually is. And go into denial even, which we're dealing with right now. Unfortunately, many of you here right now, yeah, that's why I love this webinar. I'm actually had the most fun week doing webinars of all of you, because it's like I'm talking to people who are hungry and who can see what I'm saying and don't go, you know, people who've actually got, you know, a brain, not just a brain, but got some fight and got some feistiness to say, hey, I value my freedom, and my freedom doesn't just mean that I can go and do a, you know, Instagram shoot, or go and get pissed on Friday night, or, you know, go to a nightclub and things like that. I've had clients tell me, oh, look, I'm very evolved clients. Oh, look, I've gone and got the jab. I'm like, why would you do that? Oh, well, you know, my business needs me to travel. I'm just like, God almighty, you know. But yeah, this is just what we're dealing with right now. And we might expect a lockdown. Oh, look, I have no doubt that they'll keep locking down until people say stop, you know. I mean, I think that's a given. I mean, either that or we're going to live the rest of our life in a convict colony. so, yeah. Yeah, no, exactly. And look, I mean, fairness to Mark McGowan, I mean, as I said to people at the Fremantle markets, I said, well, what would you do if you were him, if you were in his position? I said, think about it. I said, 2/3 of the state want him to do this. So if he didn't do it, he would be 20 times more hated than, you know. So I said, I wouldn't be a woman premier. In fact, I actually said, you know, to my friends, as you know, I'm pretty truthful. Like, I was asked by a client at Big Value today, I said, what would you do? Honestly, I said, honestly, if I was premier, I said, everyone would hate me. And I'm like, and they said, why? And I said, well, I would actually do a referendum. I said, what I would do is I would say, everyone, look, do you want to get locked down or not? How do you want to handle this virus? I said, I'm going to let you have the choice. I'll let you vote. We can lock you down and keep the thing out. And, you know, and we'll lock the whole city down. Or, you know, you can get on as normal, just expect some people will die and get sick. And it said, so what would then happen is, let's say the referendum was 70% or 60% said lockdown, 40% said no. But I'd say, don't just remember that you're going to vote for this. And I said, as soon as it happened, I would then lock everyone down for 14 days in their homes. I'd say no one can leave. If you come out and you're seen without a permit, you'd be instantly locked at a detention centre for 14 days and you wouldn't be allowed out. And I'd say you're allowed to go out for food once a week. And I said, by 14 days, no one would want to be locked down anymore. I said, that would end the problem in WA. And of course, he said, serious? I said, yeah, that's what I would do. I said, I'd give people a vote, and then I would say, okay. I said, that would solve the problem in 14 days. Everyone would never want to get locked down again. I'd probably resign very quickly. But yeah, that's, I think half the problem is that, you know, this is what actually goes on. So I think it's very important to kind of not get caught up with the politicians who are doing it and realize that for starters, they don't really have a lot of say anymore of what they're doing. So, yeah, well, people who say that, like I said, people have got their own particular view. And at the end of the day, I'm not defending him, but at the end of the day, if you make him your enemy, you will lose your freedoms and you'll spend the rest of your life fighting a battle that you're never going to win. So that's my honest, blunt assessment on that. So I don't really get caught up with that. I'm more caught up with fixing the problem in the first place. To me, what's going to solve the problem is getting an awakened business community. That's more what I'm interested in doing, because business people do not like getting locked down. You know, do not get caught getting locked down. So when your life and safety is literally at risk, these are the kind of things that happen in socialism. Now, I'm sure all of you heard of the bank bail-in, because that's one thing I want to make sure you understand as we go into the solutions phase. So, okay. So the bank bail-in, in simple terms, is in 2018, they passed a law that says it lined up Australia with Europe. So clearly some Europeans pushed this through. But what it now means It means that basically banks can take your savings up to $250,000. That's what it means in simple terms in a particular bank. So what it actually means in a bank bail-in law is that if you've got your money sitting in Australian banks, when they do the Great Reset, you will get a guarantee of certain savings from the government, but the rest of it will go. And so many of the wealthy, for example, have been using the offshore banks, as well as having cash in Australian banks and things like that, or moving into crypto stable coins as another example. But yes, the bank bail-in laws mean that pretty much the banks are pretty much saying, but if the economy crashes really badly, we'll just take your money off you and cancel it. That's what they're by and large saying. And in case you don't believe they plan to use it, there was an act passed called the Biosecurity Act, which some of you may have heard about, which I don't think anyone thought they'd ever use that to lock down the whole world for a virus. And here we are. So that's the Queensland Biosecurity Act. There's the Commonwealth one that was 2015. There's various different ones all over the place. So bank runs. So these are the kind of shit that we've got going on. This was what happened in the Great Depression. This was an example of what happened then. And this, I have no doubt, at some stage we'll see this. In 2007, there was a brief sign of this happening. So, so now let's look at how you protect your wealth from what actually lies ahead. So, Harry Brown model portfolio, which sovereign capitalist is Stephen Pettit, who he's a high net worth mentor that I work with in the Global Wealth Club. But this is what a lot of the wealthy are doing. Now, keep in mind, this is not advice, but this one little gem here is gold. Okay, it's the secret. Now, keep in mind that but this can look in various ways. Like some have said to me, why is property not there? Most of the elite don't really, or people who are sovereign don't really like property because it's fixed to the land, and governments are the easiest assets for governments to just swipe. So if governments decide one day they want to swipe your money, property would have to be one of the easiest assets to swipe because there's not much you can do about it. So that's why a lot of them aren't that keen on property. I'm not keen on that property myself for that reason, but in saying that, there's plenty of people who like that. So you've got precious metals like gold and silver. I've even put cryptos in there, like Bitcoin, for example, or various other ones. Then you've got like private investments. Real estate, you can actually, for example, what some people do who are real estate lovers in a portfolio like this, they may, for example, merge the bonds and the cash and have only 25% say on that, on bonds and cash. They may then have 20% on property. They may have 15% on stocks or 10% on stocks, and then they have this. Now, why do they do this? Because it means that if, let's say, for example, like metals, silver and gold, let's just say that silver and gold soar up, but the stock market crash, well, the bonds and the cash may do really well. When the stock market is absolutely plummeting, gold goes through the roof and silver as a general rule. So then let's say that cryptocurrencies suddenly, for whatever reason, completely gets taken because the government announces they're banning and making all cryptos illegal, and anyone who's found them will go straight to jail. And they announce a gold one, which can happen. Don't believe that can't happen. Well, if that actually happens, then you got other things there. So many of the wealthy might even have jewels, for example. So there's various little things that they've actually got to own these different things. So it's pretty much a protection kind of mechanism to hedge your bet, so to speak. One of my close friends made from age 18 to 31 was making $300,000 a year betting sports and doing casino betting, and all he would do was just use statistical calculations and numbers to basically hedge his risk doing all this kind of stuff. So even with my cryptos, for example, sometimes it's annoying because some of them have gone right up, but they don't really bring my whole portfolio up because I've hedged it out so much. But when the markets are plummeted really badly, I've been overall okay compared to people around me by doing this. So this one little gem, and this is just a general idea, you've got to modify this enhanced to work within your kind of personality and work within how you like things. But the big thing is to actually go, And yeah, create yourself an enhanced portfolio model and keep rebalancing it. Because let's just say your cryptos go absolutely ballistics and suddenly cryptos make up 40% of your portfolio. You probably want to sell some of it off and move it into gold. Let's say gold's out of balance or cash. So this way you're always keeping yourself balanced. So this is another gem I'll give you. It's the flags of a sovereign individual. This is the 6 basic flags of sovereignty that the wealthy go by. Number 1 is a sovereign independent cash flow. Like, I always feel for people who write things like, my employer is going to want me to take the jab or get COVID tested, anal tested, or whatever else. I set my life up so I'd never be in that position. And one of the things that the sovereign do is they find a way to get cash flow, but doesn't mean a dick can turn up and take away your freedom. So whether it's becoming a crypto trader, whether it's becoming a trader, like one of my 17-year-old sons has been studying trading and doing quite well at it in cryptos and various stocks and options and that. Another way is, for example, I've set up various online companies. And I will add, I was trained to go to university, and as I tell my sons, I've deliberately told my sons never to get a job, because once you get a job, you get used to the paycheck, and it's like taking drugs. It's hard to break the addiction, based on what Robert Kiyosaki's rich dad told him. So I said, you're better off to have financial struggles in learning to get a business going and have a few failures than you are to seek the security of a paycheck. I said to my sons, once you get older, you start getting responsibilities. You've got wives or husbands, you've got kids, you've got exes, you've got family who depend upon you, you've got a car you're paying, or you've got a house. I mean, who can relate to this? You know, and suddenly, whereas when you're like 21 or whatever, I was fortunate enough at one stage, because I was a bit of an idiot, I lost all my money and went broke in business, which was really good, because what it meant, it forced me to do things correctly. And at the time, that was my moment of testing. And I was just like, what do I do here? And I decided, well, I'm better off to suffer and live in my mother-in-law's shed if I have to get the business working. And actually literally moved in with my mother-in-law, you know, Grace's mum at the time when we were married. And the house didn't have proper air conditioning. It was a hot heat of summer. We literally were living on next to nothing. And I just said, and Grace fortunately was brilliant. She said, yeah, let's just live on next to nothing. Because I said, no. The problem is if I go and get a job, I won't ever break this cycle. So I said, I've got to break myself out of this security cycle. And it was one of the most difficult things I've ever done. But in hindsight, I'm grateful I did it. So that's my first flag to do that, is to break the security cycle and learn to do it. And just decide this day, no matter what it takes, I'm going to learn to have independent income. I'm going to learn it. And I don't care if I have to go through a lot of pain. And it is painful. I'm not going to give you anything light. You're going to hear things like, you go on the internet and have people teach you shit like, you know, you can be lying on the laptop drinking a pina colada and money just pours in. Well, yes, that can get to that eventually, but you blooming have to work your ass off to get there. I've got businesses producing very good income, but boy, I've got to keep an eye on them. I've got to make sure that the systems keep working. Got to make sure they keep coming together. If I drop the ball for a little bit, or if Grace drops the ball and the team. The second one is investment. So storing your money, but not basically being caught up in what's called stupid speculation. This is the big thing. Investment is not you becoming a crypto expert and turning around and saying to me, oh, I've made all this money from cryptos. Well, right now you could be a donkey and make money on cryptos. I mean, I reckon my mum would make money on cryptos right now, if she was in it. You know, literally, it doesn't count. It's talking about building it through smart, wise, careful investing, knowing how to balance your portfolio and staying stable. The third one is privacy, like go dark, as my mentor tells me. So that's why DuckDuckGo, or private like wallets in your crypto and things like that. And yeah, Tyler, I need to find out a cash flow. Yeah, look, the reality is if you don't have these things, you're in real trouble. I mean, I won't deny that. I remember 5 years ago saying this on webinars to people, and I think at the time people were like, yeah, okay. Whereas now I'm actually having clients saying, I remember when you told me this. I'm like, I wish I'd moved back then, and they are now. So privacy, like really making sure So privacy, by the way, doesn't mean you're doing anything illegal, but it's like, I'm not going to tell you what I'm wearing jocks or not tonight. That's not because I've got anything to hide. I'm just, that's my business, you know. I'm not going to tell you if I've had sex with anyone in the last 2 days. That's my private business, you know. So leaving a legacy beyond your lifetime. This is the fourth thing. A truly wealthy person wants to leave a legacy beyond their lifetime. They're not about, oh man, it'd be nice if I just bought a few properties and I could go to Hawaii and get drunk and bang a few people. And, you know, that's the truly wealthy are thinking like, what's the legacy I can leave? What's going to make my life count? You know, what's going to serve others? That's why I like doing webinars like this, because the one legacy I'd like to leave, or the two legacies, there's two things I've decided I want to leave. One is a really good new financial education training and network, especially for young people, especially for youth. That's why Grace at the end, when I go through options, is going to share what we're doing for teenagers right now. Like, I don't know if any of you are interested, but we actually have got a free thing at the moment that we've been working to teach youth and young kids about being sovereign, everything about jabs, around money, around everything. And we're having like parents ask us everywhere, and I'm probably more excited about that than anything else we're talking about doing, you know. So yeah, that kind of stuff. So that's one of our legacies that we want to leave, you know, to actually help kids and help youth and things like that. To actually do things like build a business that actually helps people, you know, save themselves through the Great Reset and build a really great financial education center for a new way of being. And the other one is to build a spiritual ascension center to help people, you know, move into fifth dimensional consciousness. They're my two things that I've determined to leave a legacy in my life. So, and the thing is, I've learned when you've got a legacy, wealth comes to you very easily. Like, I know, yes, we may run a lot of free stuff, but then we have clients turn up and pay us a lot of money for things, or we have an investment that happens to do very well. It's just how the universe works. So, so yeah, and then tax or residency. This is the fifth flag. Setting up structures in your home country to minimize tax and protect wealth, but also to have a tax residency in a different country from where you live. That's another one. So this is why, and by the way, notice there's building blocks here. I've tried to organize this in order. So the number one thing you want to have is cash flow. So you can kind of give yourself a score right now, whether you're 0 out of 6, like maybe give yourself a score right now. Like, are you a 0? Are you a 1? Like, if you've got a cash flow or you've got investment, then you're going to be 1 out of 6. If you've got both of them, you've got a 2 out of 6. If you've got privacy as well, you got a 3 out of 6. If you've got a real legacy and a mission that you're building, you've got 4 out of 6. If you got yourself your right structure in your home countries and you started moving towards offshore, you're on the way for 5 out of 6. The second, citizenship. Well, one of the things that a number of clients are able to do is get out of Australia when the travel bans are there because they have their second citizenships ready to go. So, out of interest, is there anyone here that's 5 or more out of 6? I'm curious. Yeah, so it's a 4. Who here is like 2 or less? Yep, there's a 0. Who here is 2 or less? Yep, okay. Yeah, a lot. So yeah, it's just a case, and the key is it's starting the building blocks and going step by step. You just start with where you're at and you build from there. If you're 0, it doesn't matter. Your first step is to get 1 sorted out. Once you got 1, get 2 sorted out. And you can be working on 3. Then you're working on 3. At the same time, you may be also planning your 4, and that will come together more. Then when you got the first 4, you start looking at the 5 and the 6. So precious metals, gold and silver. They're big ones right now. You can, and there's various ways you can buy them. And like I'm saying, I can't really go, I mean, you know, I run a whole training on gold alone. There's many ways with like the Perth Mint or coin dealers. You can buy it online in Singapore through vaults. There's various ways you can do it. Blockchain, as you know, some are buying it to make money. There's 2 reasons you can buy cryptos. One is to make money through, and one is to actually hold. Like I hold a lot of money, for example, in things like Bitcoin, Ethereum, and there's a few which are what I call my main holding coins. I don't really, they're hodls as they call them in cryptos. I just hold them. So ones, and again, not because I'm certain they'll work. I think they're most likely. Mitchell asked my prediction on Bitcoin next 12 months. Well, I don't really know. I mean, this logic tells me it's going to go up a lot in the next little while, at some stage, the next little while, only because there's a shortage of it. But in saying that, cryptos is very volatile. So, but overall, I'm expecting it to go up myself. But hedging the fact that, and this is a whole different discussion, but on the actual calculations of mathematical percentages, for example, if Bitcoin goes up by 10%, Ethereum's going to go up by 30 or 40%, and then altcoins will go up by a lot more. So it's just keeping that in kind of line as well. Equally, though, this is where the protection comes in. One big reason I hold a lot of money in Bitcoin is that when the market crashes, I don't go down as much as anyone else. So when I'm confident on the market, I'm a little bit more adventurous. Whereas as I start to see the market overheated, I start quickly moving money back into Bitcoin, as an example myself. Safe haven, like many rich have like hidden away homes and places like that. They buying rural land. Jewelry and gems is quite popular because you can carry them. And if governments are locking you down and stopping you, wanting to take your gold, there hasn't been anywhere they start taking the jewels. So these are other things, and wine collections are very popular. In terms of structuring now, which we'll cover, which is probably going to be one of the last topics we cover before we take questions and then go through options. Here's some amazing statistics for you. Have a look at what I've written there. So Sydney Morning Herald study, which, by the way, was actually Marion says, how can government take our gold? Well, because they can. I mean, governments have just proven they can lock down your city. They can certainly take your gold, Marion. They just say you've got to give it, and if you don't, you'll go to jail for 10 years. And I think most people would do it. So a journalist, Peter Martin, found that 56 richest in Australia, 2 paid tax, 1 paid 4,394, 1 over 50,000, but they spent over $1 million on average on their specialist tax advisors. His conclusion, to his great annoyance, mind you, was that tax was optional, something I've been arguing for years. I said, anyone can pay no tax legally. It just comes down to how much money you're willing to spend to do it. It's really that simple. That's the first thing to actually understand about the system. So that's why Google, for example, spend a ridiculous amount of money on their tax advisors, and Apple, because they know that by and large it's optional. It just comes down to the way your structures work, your management systems are set up, and you fall within the law and the high court decisions and stuff like that. So the biggest thing that the wealthy do that I've learned, and this was the greatest lesson I ever learned, and I followed this all my life, is control, not own. In other words, my aim is to be a penniless bum and broke as fuck on paper. And then in terms of assets, so I don't really have directorships of virtually any companies. I set up structures that really mean I don't really own the wealth. I just have control over it. So good luck to anyone ever trying to get it off me. That's been how I've done things. Saved my ass when I got myself in trouble in business, mind you. So this is what the wealthy do. They control, not own. These offshore companies, trusts, family offices and foundations, e.g. Bill and Melinda Gates, 2 of our favorite people in the world right now, much loved by all. They have a wonderful foundation that's here to help humanity. I'm sure maybe a few of you have heard about it. Then there's a lovely family called, a very family-oriented group called the Clintons, beautiful couple. They got a foundation as well. Another lovely family, a guy called Mr. Rockefeller, wonderful individual who chose to fund communism through his foundation in the 1951, and there was a big inquiry, which I thought was a bit rough, considering that, that lovely individual was just trying to help bring communism to the West. And of course, an equally wonderful group called the Catholic Church, who they're beautiful guys to bring spiritual truth to the world and things like that. And so, Yes, so yeah, there's some lovely families of the wealthy who've done this kind of stuff. There's family offices as well, and no doubt one of my favourite individuals and much loved and much missed is a certain man called Mr. Daniel Andrews. Very sad, but he hasn't been around as much. The world hasn't been the same as far as I'm concerned. Victoria's boring now. I mean, whoever's writing it now, I just hope he gets back sooner rather than later. No, seriously, who thinks that Victoria's got boring since Daniel Andrews is gone? I don't know about you, but he kind of did make life interesting. So, he got injured. He actually fell down the stairs and like fractured his back. He actually did, and he actually literally severely injured himself, and he's been off work. He's been quite badly hurt for quite some time, so he probably got pushed. I mean, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure someone pushed him down the stairs, but. Yeah, I saw some pictures of him. Yeah, he's pretty badly injured. Yeah, no, he went surfing, and he was upstairs, and there was some wet on the stairs, and he slipped, and he actually his foot went underneath him. He threw up in the air, landed hard on his spine, right in the middle, and he broke his T7 vertebrae. You know, yeah, he's probably pissed. Yeah. Either that or he went fishing and he went, oh, it was as big as this. And, but yeah, like I said, yeah, he got pretty badly injured. And like I said, Victoria hasn't been quite the same since he's gone. But yeah, anyway, so foundations are used by the elite to do good. And the overall, in theory anyway. And yeah, but Richard Branson, for example, I will say with Branson, I don't know much about him, but I've heard him speak, and I have to say he probably was the one elite person who I learned a lot from him. He gave one of the greatest talks on legacy and making a difference that I probably heard, and changing my whole perception around money and around wealth. And he's big on foundations and trusts. I mean, if you study Richard Branson, he has offshore trusts through Channel Islands everywhere, and foundations. And that's what they do. I don't know if any of you heard in the 2016, the Panama Papers that came out. The Panama Papers, where all these the hackers leaked all these wealthy people's data all over Australia. I don't know if any of you remember that, but it was big news. And it was, yep, there was 5 Australians who were actually named. In the 2016 Panama Papers. One of them was a certain individual who some of you may have heard about. His name's Warren Black. Says here, Warren Black, a Perth-based accountant and former ATO employee. And I got named in the Panama Papers, which was pretty cool. It came out and said, what is it? So here they are. I was investigator undercover for 6 months, I actually found out. The ABC told me, they said, you're the only one we didn't actually find any dirt on you. They said, so we want to know how you feel as a victim in the paper. So I actually got interviewed and got on telly and all that stuff. And I said, no, I think it's great. And they actually asked me, they said, don't you feel bad that you're helping, people avoid paying their fair share of tax? And I kind of cracked up and said, you seriously mean that? Like, you're saying that when Google pays 1% and business owners in Perth pay 30%, that's fair? And they cracked up laughing. Andrew Kitt, you forgot George Soros. No, George is great. He's got a foundation, I know, and does a lot of good. I think he runs a wonderful group called Black Lives Matters and Antifa, which is quite helpful in helping keep some good order in the US and dealing with those horrible white people, those white privileged people. I think all of them should be arrested myself. But anyway, yeah, I'll admit I didn't earn anything that I'm doing. I'm just white privileged. So, as you can see here, if you ever want a bit of a laugh, have a read of this article about the Panama Papers about me. It says, I was the only one they said this, by the way. Everyone else, they kind of implied they were dodgy son of a bitch. While with me, they actually said no illegal things, talked about my Seychelles company. He was surprised to hear about the leak, but wasn't worried because the structure was legal. He said, I've always been a big believer of minimising tax as much as you can. They actually quoted me correctly, by the way. My sister was my media advisor, and she don't do any interviews at the ABC because they will actually, the ABC, they actually said, we'll tell the truth about you, which I found the ABC were marvellous. They were very fair. I had the Age have tried twice to interview me the last 6 months, and I just haven't returned their calls. So with the newest offshore tax scams that have come out, they're trying to interview me on it. So not that I was involved in any of them. So yeah, it says he missed the black notice on his website. He's a gifted musician, uses unique piano playing skills in his YouTube video series titled Global Sovereignty. So he actually played the piano when we're singing some I was singing some rock and roll and shit like that. So yeah, I used to be a professional piano player, but that's by and by. Anyway, so that's the way the rich structure, and they get their independent tax residency. So there's various structures that are used, and this again is a whole teaching in itself. And we do have teachings on this area, which we do in our wealth group that we run. But like companies, now the big reason why the wealthy like companies and trusts is that they actually give you separation from your assets. I'll give you a simple example. Let's just say that you're running a small business. That's what actually happened to me 11 years ago. And I did a big fuck up. And I realized that I was, you know, owed $800,000 or $600,000 tax office. It had gone out of control, couldn't pay my debts, shut the company down, 100% legal, walked away from the tax debt, life went on as normal. So when you got a company, you can do stuff like that. They give you what I call a get out of jail free card if you fuck things up. So companies are very good for protection. You can get some tax minimization, and they're useful if you're going in a business partnership. They have a problem with capital gains tax, so that's why you got to see an expert who actually knows about that stuff. Trusts are my favorite, family trust, and I've used them for years. Family trusts are excellent. If you want to get a bit of a kickstart on family trusts and learn a little bit more about how they work, like I said, I'm probably got about 12, 15 more minutes before I'll take questions, and then we'll go through options. So we finished just after 9, all things equal. Maybe 9:15. Let's be realistic. So if we go to WealthSafe, which is one of my 2 companies, that's our structuring arm, and Global Wealth Club's our education arm. But you'll see that terrible picture of me. But anyway, if you look here, offshore tax planning, Australian tax minimisation, companies and trusts are written right here. So if you ever want to do that, there's even a few webinars you can watch if you ever do that. There's a YouTube channel and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, we give lots of stuff away, like I said. One of the reasons these companies have done very well, because people have said you give away more than anyone else. I'm saying, yeah, because my theory is that eventually we do that, you know, people will sign up. So, and it goes through, gives some idea. You can see this here, and gives you a bit of an idea. So anyway, that's just a bit of a where you can get more info and that kind of stuff. So trusts are really good. Offshore companies, they work really well for asset protection, and you can use them in limited situations to minimize taxes. If you're willing to become a non-resident of Australia, it's a walk in the park. If you actually are living here, forget anything you've heard. They've got limited use for tax minimization. But in saying that, if you've got large amounts of money and you're willing to spend a lot of money, and you've got offshore income from offshore businesses or investments, there are ways you can do it. Like, for example, 100 grand investment, for example, can take you up with a legal Asian-centered retirement fund or Cayman Islands investment fund, similar to what Malcolm Turnbull has got, which enables you to actually pay legally next to hardly no tax at all, and using things like non-vesting trusts and things like that. So there's things like that, but they're expensive to set up. Cook Islands trusts are the world, like basically the world leaders for asset protection. Like there's never been a Cook Islands court that's ever let a Western government come in to this day and in a lawsuit. That's why many of American wealthy people especially use Cook Islands, and Europeans. So yeah, you need an expert team when you're going offshore. It's a whole new world. Foundations are one of my favorite. Because I do a huge spiritual interest work and consciousness work, I've set up a legal church, which is basically tax-free and things like that. Very similar to what the Seventh-day Adventists have done, because we do a lot of consciousness work. Like every Sunday we run a meeting, We run one on Monday, on Friday. We run various sessions during the week of activations and things like that. Fifth dimensional ascension work. We even do work on our city. We've been doing that for quite a while now. And it's been quite interesting when we do that, what actually happens. And I was sharing with a couple of people. So, for example, Sunday, we've got a spiritual activation one. So Cara says, can I join your spiritual church? Got more info? Yeah, I'll get Grace to just put something in the chat, or even at the end, Grace is going to be, I'm going to introduce Grace, who's my, ex-wife and business partner, and, help me co-parent, bring 4 kids into the world and basically, do all that kind of stuff. And yeah, so Cara, look, yeah, definitely I'll get Grace and I will share more about that, what we do. It's not like any normal church, by the way, as you probably guessed. It's very out there. We're into spiritual warfare, but also into, just looking at ancient mystery school teachings and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, we're into and then even the financial teachings and all that, and, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, we kind of like to go right out there. So yeah, look, it's all fun stuff. I love doing, out there stuff. But yeah, that means that because I've got that done up, it's 100% legal. I pay next to nothing tax. The scroll of Ezra, which is an ancient scroll from the Bible, which was based on ancient common law, clearly says that if you've got a church being a church which is doing higher work, it's always going to be tax exempt. So there's higher laws involved in this. Second, passports are another thing as well. I won't go too much into that. I've mentioned this. Panama is a popular place because you can get a residency very easily there. Costa Rica is common with retirees. These are just all examples for you. Bali used to be amazing. It's kind of a bit difficult now with the whole pandemic. Wow, there's lots of people interested in the spiritual church. Okay, well, Grace, you're going to have to tell everyone when I introduce you. Thailand, Malaysia, Hong Kong is one of my favorite. That's where I've set up a bit myself as well. Hong Kong is brilliant for banking and investing and still is, and many of the elite love that. It's probably one of the most favorite. Singapore, I remember flying and opening up a Singapore bank account in 2016, and I never seen anything like it. The banks were magnificent, magnificent banking system, like so well done. Just checking, Grace, are you there at the moment? Just checking that you're here. Just type in the chat.
I am.
Oh, you are here. Great. Good. I'll be bringing you on a bit later on. Just wanted to make sure you're around. Seychelles, foundations, freedom, privacy protection. Keep your questions so when question times come shortly, everyone. I'm not going to see all these ones in the chat. So what you'll probably have to ask a lot of them again. I like Seychelles, and as you can see, that was mentioned. So tax structuring, basically, of any kind. So basically, foundations are very good for tax minimization, companies, trusts, offshore. One question I did see that I will answer with someone else, what's the point of, say, banks, if you don't like them and they're corrupt? The reality is that you don't know how long things are going to last, and that's why the secret of wealth building is you just got to actually hedge your bets. You don't know. For all we know, cryptocurrencies could go up 100-fold in the next month. For all we know, Joe Biden could make a statement. I mean, every government across the world in September makes it illegal and bans it and says anyone who holds any Bitcoin wallet will be in jail instantly. And I have a feeling that would infect the markets pretty significantly. So everything in life is a gamble. Getting into a car and going and driving on the road is a gamble. Going out without a mask is a gamble. Going out with a mask is a gamble. Going on a plane is a gamble. I mean, everything is a gamble. It's just a question of some are more risky than others. So finally, as we go into questions, you can take a screenshot of these. These are the 7 principles of asset protection that I go by and most high net worth clients go by. Control, not own. Own nothing but control everything. I've mentioned that. Using structures being a penniless bum. I've mentioned that. Here's a big one. Never have your business cash structures the same as your investment. Why? Because if you get sued in your business or the government comes after you, you will lose your investments as well. So that's a dumb thing to do. So make sure that if you've got properties, cash, gold, silver, cryptos, make sure you've got a structure. Most crypto investors just haven't done any structuring. And I've been predicting, and I predicted so far every ATO crackdown because I used to work for them. I think the ATO are about to make a lot of money out of audits on crypto investors, because I hardly ever met a crypto investor who set up correctly. Most of them buy Trezor or Nano wallets, or they just use a few exchanges in their own name. And then they go, oh shit, how am I supposed to structure? And then they realize that they're going to have a lovely little juicy tax bill. So their choice is to do a dodgy thing to try and get around it, or, you know, just have to pay a lot of tax and bite the bullet. So if you own a lot of cryptos, you should be moving your ass in record time on that one if you haven't got your structures done. So you should be always making sure that you can choose your tax planning. Offshore strategy, always have wealth in a sovereign jurisdiction out of Australia as well. So if the shit hits the fan in Australia and they decide to lock down things, you've got some little nest eggs offshore. That's one of the first rules in every underground movement you'll find. Regular review, have experts to guide in the same way you have naturopaths or doctors. I mean, doctors are probably not a good example, but you know what I mean, naturopaths, health practitioners, counsellors, you know, favourite strippers, favourite pubs, favourite cafes, you know, private lap dances, whatever else. Having your right financial team. And having the team of experts to come and manage it as well. So, okay, this is your opportunity, and the time to take charge of your money and be a sovereign individual and take charge of your ship and be the captain of your own ship. In other words, you know, fuck your accountant, fuck your lawyer, fuck your financial advisor. And obviously, look, if you want specific advice, then go and see them. But my opinion is just become sovereign, educate yourself. You know, get your knowledge, learn about it yourself, and actually just hire people to work with you to educate and guide you in your path. I mean, I choose my spiritual path. I have mentors. I see my life like Roger Federer or Novak Djokovic. You know, they're the best tennis players in the world, but they still have coaches. So I've got mentors in my spiritual life. I've got them in my financial, business mentors. Got a business coach right now, still to this day. I get once a month counselling at a minimum. I go and get counselling. Why? Because I've got mental problems? No, I'm actually in a very good mental state, and I plan to stay that way. So, you know, looking after your money and securing your future, a great time for wise action. And the biggest thing I'll say to you is that when everyone else is panicking is a time to strike. This is the greatest chance. This is going to be the greatest time in your life you could almost ever have to strike. And for some of you who spent all your life trying to build a financial future for your family and to do something, you'll never get a better chance than this to be part of a great wealth transfer. And that's no hype. You just won't. I mean, cryptocurrencies, as the markets crash, they're going to melt down like you wouldn't believe. They're going to go like you're going to watch in astonishment. And if you're prepared, if you're calm, and you'll never get a greater opportunity than you're going to get right now to actually, you know, grow your wealth. Like never. It's just a magnificent opportunity that you've actually got. So, and I'll just finish before I take the questions now. We've made one of my favorite scriptures for 2021 from the Holy Bible, and written by the wisest man who ever walked the earth, they say, King Solomon the Great, in the last book he ever wrote before he passed on. He says in verse 11 and 12, he says, I returned and I saw under the sun that the race is not to the swift, nor is the battle to the strong. In other words, nor is it to the super strong, nor is bread in abundance to the wise and the super smart, nor riches to men of understanding or women who are intelligent or academic, nor favor to men who are skillful, but time and chance happens to them all. In other words, everyone has your moment of opportunity. All of you can look back at times over your life when you knew you had a chance and you fucked it. Whether it was business, you missed an opportunity financially because you hesitated from fear. You knew there was someone that you loved. You knew that you had a chance to ask them out. You didn't do it. You know, I'm not trying to be a Tony Robbins or any shit like that, but I cannot say strongly enough that this is time and chance. This is a time and chance you can look back on And what we decide now decides their history. Either we remember there's a toilet paper idiots of 2020 in the cowards who sat back there and let our country be taken and let us lose our money from some dipshits in Europe, or we were the people who stepped up and took our city back and written about in history books and actually said, fuck you, and didn't do it by being angry and being a bunch of galahs running around being stupid, but through wise, smart, decision-making, learning, calming down, buckling up for the long haul, realizing we're not going to walk up tomorrow and stop the mask, but if we are wise, in 2 years' time, we can not only stop all that shit, we can actually have the whole city completely back not into normal, but way beyond normal, and have like the best city in the whole world. And I believe that, I really do. I think we have the best opportunity we could ever have in our life. And the warning from King Solomon was for man doesn't know his time. As the fishes that are taken in an evil net and as a bird in a trap, so are the sons of men snared in the evil time when it falls suddenly upon them. In other words, most people have been snared by this time in an evil time, and they will be snared because most people will be running around in panic, saying, I'm a freedom fighter, I'm a this or whatever else. But there's never a better time than to take action and be strong and say, no, I'm sovereign, not because I'm going to run around saying I am, but just because I am, because the order of creation says, God, I'm created by Almighty God, whoever that happens to be in your belief system. And then government comes under me. We, the people, vote the fucking government, not the other way around. And just knowing that, not saying that, but living it. So excuse my Tony Robbins speech, but yeah. So in summary, as we finish off, go to the questions and then share how you can, moving forward and meet grace. Worst case scenario, take a brutal look on where you're at. Like, this is what I call, just take the worst case scenario. Where you're really at, like, where are you at? Are you vulnerable as fuck? Like those 6 flags of sovereignty. Are you happy with where you are? What actions you got to take? My guess is everyone here has got some stuff to do. I've still got a shitload to do, and we don't stop moving. Get some specialist advice, get some help. Don't try and do this on your own. Make your own decisions, blame no one else, but get help from people who know more than you, whoever that happens to be, and get educated and be wise. And on that note, before we go into options, I'll start going through the questions. And then I'll have Grace come on in about 5 minutes for the camera. Do you have a reset prediction date? Not really. I mean, kind of. I'm saying around 2023 to 24 myself, possibly even 2025, somewhere around that. Can an average Joe tradesman do much to minimise tax? I pay nearly 50K a year. Shit's living daylight out of me. Yeah, I don't blame you. It's bloody thievery. Look, it's almost impossible for employees. This is the simple rule. Small business owners with an income less than 150,000, not a lot. There are things you can do. Once you start going to 200,000 plus, the more money you make, the less tax you can pay. Now that sounds bizarre because your accountant's probably told you, the more you make, the more tax you pay. No. The more money you make, the less tax you'll pay because now you can start getting decent advice. So you get what you pay for. So, Connor, is there any point trying to pay off my mortgage or max out the debt and try and buy some rural land? Look, I personally, and this is a hard question to answer because you'll hear different stories, and I'm not saying this is not my advice, this is what I do. I don't like debt. I just don't, especially when things like this are coming. I don't like it. Most super wealthy people don't really like it either. That's what I've noticed. They only get it when it's really going to be a natural win-win-win-win. So King Solomon, by the way, the wisest man, pretty much said the borrower is servant to the lender. The moment you get debt, you're the bitch of the bank. The moment you go and get a loan from someone, you're their bitch. You have to now turn up and work whether you like it or not. It's that simple. So I don't like debt for that reason. It's an enemy of sovereignty. Connor, I've started buying a small amount of coins, all we can afford, gold coins. Thoughts, I can't advise, but certainly doesn't sound like a dumb thing. Sounds like a smart thing for me. I'm not going to say I'm not going to answer your super question, Connor, just because I'm not licensed to do super. I just don't like it, and I'll leave it at that. how do you set up your structure? See your accountant, or at the end, we are going to give people options to have a chat. You know, if you feel like you'd like to talk more to us on it, Ben and Grace can give you various options to go ahead, ranging from being part of a club to get educated, or actually getting some private advice to set up structures and get some help, you know. So yeah, so either go to your normal accountant if you like them and you can't trust them, or if you think I wouldn't mind talking to someone else who does structures, you know, connected with you, because we do that, then yeah. Can you help with changing my loan into my home into a legal title? No, I can't. I don't know anything much about property law at all, and you can't do it anyway in Australia. That's my very limited understanding of it. Do you do much about Desi Trust? No, I don't like them. That's my simple answer, for many, many reasons, which I won't go into. And I know the person who does them, and I like her, and I think she's pretty smart, but I just don't like them, and I don't know anyone who's a lawyer who does. Mitchell, do you see crypto markets will melt as a blowout with fiat? I don't actually know. I mean, more likely than not, it will shoot up. But I mean, crypto's a weird market. That's a lot dependent on government and what the elite are doing. Like Elon Musk goes and buys Bitcoin and shoots up. So crypto's a bit unclear. Do you have to travel to these countries to set these up? Once upon a time, yes. These days, not so much. Some of them, yes, but some of them are now doing online, like online residency. Panama's announced one, but yeah, still, but it's a different kind of one. What can the average Joe do? Works for the man, needs a job to pay his kids' school fees. Yeah, look, frankly, my opinion is you're in a tough situation, you know, because you're really hoping that you win this war and the government does the right thing. That's my really honest and kind of difficult truth, as I see it. You know, I like to kind of say the ugly truth. That's why I realized that I was very vulnerable, because I was basically trained up to be a lawyer and accountant. That meant I was used to being a kind of narcissistic, you know, egotistical dude who was getting well paid and made big money from being a lawyer. So it's very difficult for me to break the cycle, because you're on high incomes and you can buy whatever you want. And then I have a friend who actually used to help prostitutes get out of prostitution. The biggest problem was most of them were making really big money, and the reason why most women wouldn't leave, she was telling me, was that she said they were used to be able to buy luxury cars and everything with their money. So when they quit doing it, you can't exactly put in your resume past experience prostitute, you know. So it's very difficult for them to get out for that reason. So she said she runs an assistance program to help, a lady called Linda Watson of House of Hope. So yeah, I would be suggesting going through what I'm saying about this kind of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on the flags of sovereignty and start each one. Structures with crypto. Yeah, look, that's a kind of big question. It's to do with trusts and, you know, various things like that. But yeah, look, like I said, if you're welcome to put your name and have a chat or whatever else. And we do have some pretty good stuff on trust. You can look at that WealthSafe site. So, state financial institution to store cash even in short term. Yeah, look, I don't really know on that one. I mean, banks are one of these things that anything with banks is a risk, you know. I have some money in banks as cash because I don't know what lasts. I have some in cryptos. I have some in offshore banks. I as storage. I mean, I have various things, and the truth is, I don't know. It could all go down, but my risk is, but I'm less likely than the average person. Andrea, what if trusts become illegal? Well, there'll always be something else you can do, Andrea. That's my probably learning from that, and I highly doubt that they will, because almost every politician and every farmer has got them. So that was why when they tried to, you know, crack down on trust in 1999, they wouldn't do it. So crypto's going down with Mark's opinion. I don't really know. I think if anything, they're likely not to, but time will tell. Can the other non-resident country bank do a bail-in of your dollars? I don't understand your question. It's a bit difficult, a bit long, and I can't quite get what you're saying. Yeah, I get one of your questions. If you own property in a foreign country like Canada, With tax-free Australia, can the country steal your asset or confiscate it? The short answer is, well, yeah, they can, because tax treaty is different to an asset confiscation. Governments can do what they want. That's the rule of thumb. Can you get your old super money out early? You can, but I don't know much about that. Since 2017, unless you're a licensed super accountant, you can't do it. And I don't like super anyway, so I don't really care about it. But yeah, I know you can do it, but I don't really know how. Any colleagues or recommendations for Canadians? No. Do you do the same for super fund buying cryptos and agent, just like discretionary trust purchase agreement? Yeah, you can do that. There's a bit more involved in that, but yes, there are stuff you can do tax-wise on that structuring. When do you have 1 hour sessions where I can ask? Yeah, we do have paid advice sessions, which I'll run through shortly, Wendy. So good question. With my business partner does those ones mainly, but yep, got that. When you talk about shares, do they help overseas? Is it safer? What about holding gold overseas? Yeah, look, I like holding that. To me, having some gold in Australia and some gold overseas makes sense to me. To me, that's just my personal opinion, because if the government here decide to steal everyone's gold, at least you've still got some somewhere. That's just my own personal opinion, for what it's worth. Do you agree with the predicted cyber attack and food shortages? I certainly do. I'd be very surprised if it didn't happen. Ideas, tips for moving money overseas. I would say, I'm not quite sure. That's a very general question, but right now you just move it over. So you can always be more specific. Should we have large amounts of savings or split up as you suggested? I'm not advising on, I don't give advice, but you can kind of read between the lines about my Harry Brown split portfolio, about balancing your portfolio between different things. Mitch, how would you suggest getting offshore tax residency out of the country? There's always a way. There's countries that will give it to you, and then there's exemptions. One of my clients got an exemption. He applied to go for Panama. You'd be surprised how many exemptions actually are to these travel rules. There's like much more than you realise. So it's kind of like why I tell people when they say to me, how are you going to cope with not traveling? I said, I'll be traveling. They say, how will you do that? I said, I don't know yet, but I said, there's always a way through anything. So I said, you know, there's virtually no law you can't get around. So I said, we just got to kind of wait and see what the standards are. But I said, I have no doubt that if I wanted to travel Qantas without a mask and without being jabbed, I would do it. I said, I don't know if I want to, because I don't like extortioners and blackmailers. So that's just my own personal ethics. But, you know, if you bought cryptos in a personal name and it has gone crazy already, is rolling into a family trust after the fact possible? And would it affect future track residency? Well, not really, no. The problem is you're going to have some tax things inevitably, and you've got to kind of stop the rot pretty quickly. And that's why I said most crypto investors are caught in a very difficult situation, because they've either, you know, got to do something a bit dodgy to avoid paying tax in the past, which technically is very naughty, or they, you know, what I just tell them is just wear the fact that you're going to have to pay some tax, and that's just the price of not doing it properly, but just get it done right in future. I personally don't like, you know, lying in bed looking over my shoulder wondering if someone's going to come for me. So you just got to always ask yourself that. Do we ever own our primary residence? I don't think so myself. Any colleagues or recommendations for South Africans? Unfortunately not. Can the banks take your safety deposit, Ox and a bail-in? Not that I'm aware of, but as I tell people, governments can do what they want if they go feral and you read the sovereign individual. I mean, governments, if you control the sandpit, you can choose the rules you play in it, as we're now discovering with Twitter and Facebook's, you know, decision to jail people just because, you know, I know people who've been Facebook jailed for actually sharing a direct government directive. How do you see skills, abilities, intelligence as a potential investors? Don't actually understand the question. Are there only certain countries you recommend for offshore investments? I don't recommend any for offshore investments because I'm not allowed to do it. Have you looked at the viability of a resource-based economy like the Venus project? No, never heard of that. So I can't answer that because I haven't heard of it. How would you suggest getting, oh, I've answered that one. You said before you think Australia will become a sovereign nation. Your thoughts when Trump gets back in, though? I highly doubt Trump will get back in myself. If that happens, I will be the most surprised person on the planet. I highly doubt he'll ever be president again, but I think he'll come back in another form. It's my prediction with Trump. So, yeah, I'm certain he'll come back in another form, like with a new social media platform to take on Facebook or something. That's what I hope he does. So, yeah, this guy's a lot of questions. It's impressive. Are you setting up having an option to going off grid in a property somewhere? Oh, look, I'll say I've certainly got my safe haven. I'll say that much. Buying land, really good idea. Well, Bill Gates seems to think so, as do most of the wealthy. So that, I think, is a pretty good answer. Any stock market investor educated you like most? Not really. Gold was taken from a safety deposit box in the US. Can't recall state government said it was illegal funds. Yeah, you could well be right. I don't know, but governments can do what they want. Owning nothing and being happy is an ideal. Would imply embracing sovereignty. Have you considered this as a state we already have? I don't understand what you're saying. So, okay. I know there's lots of questions here. Hong Kong. Companies are moving away from Hong Kong due to China taking more gold. Well, like I said, we deal with very high net worth people, and I don't know anyone who's doing that. So maybe, I'm sure there are some, but people who know Hong Kong, one thing about China is they look after their commercial interests. So they're a bit like investing in the mafia. I feel more safe investing in China than almost anywhere else because, yeah, basically it's like being in the KGB bank. They always look after their customers. If China and Australia show serious signs of ever going to war, then I would probably reconsider that. But yeah, at the moment, I feel probably more safer in Hong Kong than anywhere. New Zealand assets you would class as foreign investments? Yes, technically. Sharon, how does one deal with the feeling of being overwhelmed by what's coming and not be sure where to start in terms of reorganizing? Look, it's a good question. The main thing is to start one at a time. And so this is where you just go one, you just literally just start somewhere. Like, I mean, I have so much to do right now, you cannot comprehend. I mean, like I said, I've got my shit together, but you can all, but I've got so many areas where I haven't. Like, you know, we're doing so many projects to get things organized. And just when I think I've got another one, you know, like my task list is 3 type pages long and it just still keeps going. So I just systematically go through these things and work at it and then work at it and work at it. So you just got to go and get one thing done. So if you haven't got a sovereign cash flow income, like a business that you control or something that governments can't easily take from you, then that's your first priority, you know, because that's your livelihood. So, you know, if you're running a business in Perth where government locks you down, hurts you badly, your first priority should be to find a way around that. Now, it doesn't mean that you don't stand up for your rights and what you're doing there, but you want to basically be able to do it from a position of power. Like I'm doing this from a position of power. I'm not basically standing my ground teaching this because I'm shitting myself about my money. I'm actually doing okay for myself right now. But I'm doing this because, yeah, you know, like I'm saying, I'm actually doing this. Hang on a second. Yeah, so I'm doing this myself at the moment because I actually desire quality of life and desire to see freedom for all in our city, because it's a pretty shitty city to live in. Everyone's running around afraid, wearing masks and doing all that kind of stuff. I'm sure you would, you know, agree with me, you know. So it's just getting your sovereignty with your cash flow. I cannot emphasize enough. So you're coming from a place of power. That would be your first thing to work on. So now I'm going to go and start to just run through the options and finish off now. So businesses that will thrive, well, online, health, food, things like that, energy, all that. Okay, so who wants to hear what's next and what options you can do? Just in terms of, moving forward. So, yep, I'll run through that now. So a few people would like to hear more. Yep, look, it's really quite simple what you do from here. You just hope it all works out like what everyone else is doing. That's one option. As I think everyone here is learning, that's not the way to go. Second one is, look, if you've got someone that you trust and you're happy with, then great, I'm never a believer in breaking up happy marriages. Stay where you are and go and see them. But if you're like, yeah, look, I wouldn't mind something better, what we're about more is a bigger solution, like we're saying. That's just what we do. So we're not really, like people say, do you do hourly consults yourself? No, I don't. I prefer to set up like education communities, holistic stuff, and really helping people, like depending on where they're at. So we've got a range of solutions of what we do, like ranging from educating people right from the beginning, right up to the more advanced. Like we have a beginners, intermediate, and advanced in our Global Wealth Club, for example. So this is a stark reality, and only 4%, they say, become really financially free just because there's just so much to do to get to this spot. There's a general 80-20 rule and a 20-80 rule and the 80-20 rule. So things like that. So, so if you resonate with this and you think, yeah, this is actually really, really good, like I said, we are wanting to invest in it. Here's what to do next, Look, what we do is that this just gives you a little bit of an idea. What we do is that Grace. So how I get this, how Grace and I do, Grace is brilliant. So Grace, you want to bring your camera on just so that everyone can see you, your very good looking face. And come on.
His sense of humour is still here.
Oh, yeah.
Hi, everybody. Good evening, and thanks for your patience. And wow, the numbers are still quite high. Everyone's really keen and hungry tonight.
Yeah, so thanks. So Grace is great, like always. I mean, we're, like I said, we used to be married and then basically, upgraded and moved on and things like that. And we give each other shit, if you haven't noticed that yet.
Look, I upgraded him first. I left him before he left me. I saw the light. I was enlightened, and it's made such a difference.
Nah, she's still getting over me, but that's okay. So what we've got here. So look, basically, I'll just quickly show you and then let Grace share a little bit about more what we're about. And yeah, so what we do there is we have options like people asked about private advice, and I'll get Grace to share more about the club in a minute, but yeah, private advice, that's one option where we go through and give some thorough advice to you. And look, we start from beginners to intermediate, like I said, to the people looking for bigger solutions. So whether it's just you really like you said, look, I don't even know where to start. We've got a literal program for I don't even know where to start. We've got one where if you're like, yep, I'm by and large on my way, I've got a business, got some cash flow, but need some advanced structuring, got to learn more about your sovereignty, then right up to even, syndicates and all that. So there's an array of different things that we do. We even got, like Grace will share about the youth teenagers group that we're running to help. And then, like I said, this is, if you're more at that stage and probably one of the 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, and normally in the number of this month, there'll be probably a very tiny number of you. That this is if you're kind of like, yep, I really want to get financially sovereign and get there fast, and I'm willing to get, and I want some decent mentoring, then that's where our Global Wealth Club, that's where we work. And really, there's not just me, there's a number of different people involved in this. We just work together as a sovereign community, and like our own little Perth underground community. But in saying that, until now of this group, Perth's always been hasn't been a bigger group. Most of our clients are in the East Coast or internationally, so in different parts of the world. So yeah, so we have weekly trainings right up to various like off-the-cuff trainings. We teach on everything like market updates to business stuff. Yeah, I'll just quickly show you the membership site so you can see it for yourself. what the club's about. You just got to go here and complete the form, and this just goes through where you can talk to Grace. You can actually tick what you want, and then when you click that form, you'll be asked to just fill out a brief questionnaire, and that just helps us understand more what you're looking for precisely. So Grace can really help, and you'll see it here: beginners, advanced. We've got the investment club, we've got the elite for people who want second passports, and then we've got the youth program, then our weekly trainings, and then we've got a little bit more about how to join the club. And what this is here, this is just like I mentioned about my 2019 training and things like that. So we've got all that in there. So yeah, that's just a bit of an overview. We're going to be busy, yeah, well, we'll see, hey? I mean, we'll be either inundated or everyone will say, great webinar, no one will turn up. We don't, who knows? You never know what's going to happen. But Grace, maybe you share a bit more and introduce yourself and share kind of like the vision, because you're the main one who really drives a lot of this with me.
Well, as Warren has discussed, we've actually been on this path for over 2 decades. And I spoke to someone today, one particular client, and as I say, we've been doing this for over 2 decades. And so when we first started, or Warren first started teaching about common law, everyone thought we were crazy, we were nuts, because really it was just all theory. But 2 decades later, well, here we are. Everything that Warren mentioned at that time, it's all going one by one. Just like, if I'm sure everyone's heard of David Icke, he's been going for 3 decades. And how crazy was he? Labelled and everything, and everyone hated him right there. So it's actually a sigh of relief for us where we are today. So all we see right now, yes, everything's happening, everything is the COVID and all these stuff, and a lot of people are moving in fear. But all we see is the other side, the flip side today is there's so many opportunities. There's so many, the Great Reset is all about a new life. So we're moving from old energy to new energy. So for those who can shift from the old energy to the new energy, well, it's going to have a lot of light for you, a lot of glory, and a lot of abundance, shall we say, because in every economic downturn, in those who have the funds, it's a stakeout. You can get opportunities are everywhere. So really, in Global Wealth Club, it is a special club. It's not for everyone. So those who have the finance and those who are moving in that sovereignty, and they already are in that sovereignty, self-governing role, and they're ready to shift, and they just needed guidance, then that's you're in the right place. Now, in saying that, we've shared about City Awakening. Also, we've got our other spiritual work and project with the Awakening Within, and especially the youth training that I have fun with the kids. And so those who are young at heart, you are certainly welcome to join that. And so there's different levels that we offer, because we understand that first and foremost, you've got to start somewhere. And starting somewhere from the very basic to medium, and also if you are, if you're an employee and moving towards being a business owner, then that's we cater for all that, because again, we were once employee ourselves. When we read the Robert Kiyosaki book of Rich Dad, Poor Dad back in the mid-90s, it was a no-brainer. We had to move into that, because back then Robert Kiyosaki even prophesied about the economic downturn and the shift in the financial sector and the business sector. So it was like, we got to get onto the bandwagon. So we really started late in the 90s, moving into our own business. So we've had our own business since 2001, and we've been building momentum and done all sorts of crazy stuff, and it's been fun, but it's also been crazy, and there's lots of tears and lots of pain along the way. But hey, that's the exciting part. We are on this path that is so exciting. So we are building really a community, and since reading Perth's Awake Business, it's been really, really good. I mean, it's been very intriguing how inspired people are and where they want to go. So Really, what we want to build here is a real living community. And so not only do we cater for this and we can assist you, but it also is empowering you. You're the one that has to be empowered. You're the one that, you know, works with us. So we kind of work hand in hand. We marshal together. We run together in this. So as I say, we do have high paying fees, but also we have a lot of free things to offer. So in terms of yeah, City Awakening, it's important, it's imperative, whatever God is to you, whatever is meaning for you, it's important that we must move into that energy. Now, my role in the company is I do a lot of energy work. I do a lot of transformational work. That's my specialty. And I really love what I do. And so we have different groups for that too, in assisting your mindset, assisting your emotions, body, mind, heart, and soul. We do all that. And so, yeah, check out our website. Join as a membership. It's free. It's a free membership. There's heaps of blogs. There's plenty of videos for you guys to watch and start really educating yourself, start preparing yourself. And I think learning over 2 decades in this path of common law, of sovereignty, the most important thing is you must not move in fear. If you move in fear, it just attracts all sorts of things to you, the government, police, you name it. So my experience in that, people who've worked along with us over the years, who moved in fear, they've been threatened, harassed, they've been bankrupted by ATO, you name it, the businesses got ransacked. And so that's the biggest learning for us, is that move in love rather than in fear. If you have any anxiety, if you have any worries, anything like that, if you have someone to talk to, if you have someone to reach out to, or if you get counselling, as Warren said, I have my mentor myself. I have my business mentor that I meet once a week. I have a friend down the road who, if I require cleansing and clearing things, I reach out to them. And so we have different forms of medallions to be able to really equip ourselves, because it's imperative that your mind and your heart are one in coherence with each other, that they're talking to each other, and also you reach out. It's important that, you know, we move together as one. And so I really, really encourage that. So really that's what we're about. So the thing is, right now is just we're getting to know each other. We get to know you, you get to know us. Have a look at what we do and just do your own research. And you got any questions, just reach out to us. So really that's what we're about. So for the youth training, I do Thursdays at 11 o'clock Perth time. We're looking to do it twice a week. So mainly for those who are young at heart, you know, I teach a lot on mindset and teach them the quantum physics and esoterics, as well as, you know, how to be a leadership in community and things like that. So truly shifting the mind, the young, you know, basically the young at heart, so that they can move into that sovereign individual. As the book says, as I say, I encourage you guys to read that book, moving them into that sovereign individual and how to live that life, not just theory, but how to live it. So knowledge is powerful, but if you put that knowledge into action, then it turns into wisdom. So hopefully we'll all become wiser as we apply all our knowledge.
Excellent.
So,
well, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, thank you, Grace. So in summary, look, thank you for coming, everyone. Here's the list of things. Just a few people have messaged me already, and we've been getting forms coming in, just so we get some idea who actually is planning to fill out the form or inquire a little bit more. I'm just curious to get some idea. I've already had a few things flying through. Already sent, yeah, and I've been seeing them flying through. Yeah, okay, I think, Grace, maybe it looks like we are going to be busy. You just never know. I've done webinars and people seem really happy. Not a single person's even written a form. And when I've done one, everyone looked bored shitless, and then everyone signed up. So you just never to hear more.
Well,
So
it's the
yeah,
moment, isn't it? It's the moment. It's time to really take action and really prepare the ground, really look at your foundations and have a solid foundation, not just in business and in everything you do, but mentally and emotionally. Really have build a strong foundation and start cultivating inner strength, guys.
yeah, no, absolutely. So what I might even do, just quickly, now that we're finishing off, I might just quickly show you. So what I'm going to do now is it's finished now, but for those who want to stay for 10 minutes, I'll go through the spiritual stuff we do as well. I'm going to finish it right now, or pause the recording. Oh, thank you. But those who want to stay around just for 10 more or 5-10 more minutes, I'll quickly show you what we're doing there. So I'm going to just pause the recording now and thank everyone for coming.